We're going to have 2 days on the way of the Bodhisattva. And as you probably noticed, it already began. Because I tried to orchestrate this whole morning in such a way that you would be prepared to open in a way you may never have done before to the vastness of infinite compassion. A compassion rooted in enlightened mind, a compassion willing to go to any lengths to free and liberate the world. We began in that marvelous experience of noble silence as we traveled through this landscape of noble silence, this landscape of naked mind. And then we went and sat in a cafe. And instead of chattering, which is wonderful, I love chattering, we listened to the music of reality together. And I hope you felt, as I felt, tremendous intimacy with everybody there listening. An intimacy that was deeper than any intimacy we could have had by talking. Just hanging out in the music together. I've spent weeks in remote Ladakhi villages, and I'll tell you something, people don't talk a lot. They have something so much more wonderful to communicate to each other. They sit with each other, and they touch arms. And for an hour and a half, nobody will say a word, and you'll see these 2 old guys, or these 2 young men, or these 2 beautiful young girls just loving each other purely, earthily, sweetly, in the presence. My prayer is that as we go deeper into this amazing world, we'll slow down so much that all the barriers that we've erected to the really beautiful intimacy that exists naturally between human beings, so naturally, will fall away. And we'll become what we may not have been since we were little children. Absolutely happy just to be with each other in the music of reality, in a place that has been sanctified by adoration of bodhicitta, of eternal compassion and naked mind for over 1,000 years. Try it. Nobody has anything to prove in this room. Nobody's qualifications or wealth or fame matter in this room. None of that matters here. None of it matters in Ladakh. That belongs to the world of fantasy. The world of absolute, joyless illusion. I'll tell you what lives here for me. And I'll speak about my great teacher, my sublime teacher, who was a Buddha. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because I'm going to tell you a story I haven't told ever. Because I'm home, and I'm home with him, and he's here, and he's listening. And that's confirmation. There are two stories which constantly come back to me when I think of him and I think of Ladakh. I first met him in my first journey when there were hardly anybody from outside here, 3 or 4 people in this vast landscape. Hardly any roads, no restaurants, no telephones, nothing. A raw, pure world, utterly unimaginable. I had never imagined that anything like that could exist. And I was desperate, because I was much too intelligent already to want to go forward with a meaningless life, but I didn't see any alternative. And that first meeting I wrote about in that book. And when I came back to England, to Oxford, to All Souls Oxford, after this nuclear bomb had gone off in my mind and heart, somebody asked me at lunch, "Oh, Andrew, did you enjoy your little holiday?" And I made the absolutely tragic and idiotic mistake of trying to explain a little of what had happened to me. And the table fell into a ghastly, terrifying silence. And afterwards, my best friend, who was the greatest living military historian and a mentor of mine, Michael Howard, came up to me and he said, "Darling, never talk about mysticism. It's something only for Americans." And at that moment, I realized that I hadn't simply had a momentous experience. I had come to a moment in my life where I had to make a very dramatic choice. I'd already decided that I must write about this. And I realized after that comment that if I did, I would ruin my life. If I did, I would lose all my friends, I would lose the prestige of the position I had, I would be mocked and derided and considered crazy. And I realized that if I didn't, I would be one more mediocre life, one more wasted life, one more unborn being, one more devastated, secretly despairing, keep up the bright light. And it was as plain as day, and I was terrified. Because leaving at the top is hard. And not knowing how to write a book which had never been written before was hard. Because I had no models. There wasn't a book in English that had ever been written like the one I wanted to write. So I had nowhere to look for, nothing to look to. And so I started. And every time I took another leap, I felt him guide me through dreams, through sudden insights, through sudden moments when I thought, this is how you organize it. And the presence of him, while he sat here and I was 7,000 miles away, the presence of his mind, his love, saying constantly, you can do this, I will guide you. You don't know this language yet. It's I will teach you A, and then I'll teach you B, and then I'll show you you're not crazy, and I will teach you C, and then we'll get to D. We'll rest at D, because D is rather difficult, but that will go to E. And I began to understand viscerally that there is a wholly another world here, the world he had shown me, but the world that I was now experiencing because I'd taken a leap to write a book of adoration of him. Adoration is the key. People talk about devotion, but the Tibetans don't go in for devotion. They go in for something much, much deeper. When you see the Tibetans around the Dalai Lama, they're not in a state of decent Anglo-Saxon devotion. You know, I'm rather devoted to the Archbishop. He seems like such a sweet old boy. They're in a state of absolute awe and ecstasy because they adore the Dalai Lama. They would die for the Dalai Lama. One touch from the Dalai Lama they cherish for a lifetime. One look from the Dalai Lama they remember in their homes and speak of to their children. And until you adore, which is what I learned here in this room among others with that amazing man, until you meet someone who so stuns you by their beauty of spirit and presence, their majesty, their sincerity, their learning, their majesty of magic, until you meet that person and until you feel that kind of adoration which completely transcends any other feeling, no sexual feeling, no emotional feeling, no even great friendship. It is in a different realm of truth. And it is the holiest thing that you can experience on the earth for another person. And it is the way you learn about this compassion. Because adoring someone like that teaches you how to adore the creation so much that you allow yourself to feel its pain and then let your heart break open. Because at last you're ready, you're strong enough to love and feel and give your life. But you have to feel that adoration first. Anyway, I finished the book and I went back to Ladakh a year later and I came to Hemis and I heard that he was dying, but he was here and he was extremely sick, and in fact he would die 2 years later in Darjeeling. And that broke my heart, obviously. But I went to my first audience with him and I brought him my book. I told him what it was. He took it, he put it beside him on a table. He said absolutely nothing about it. And that was the moment when I loved him the most. I had risked my career. I had stepped into the unknown. I had written something that had never been written before. I had risked my psyche, and he didn't give a damn. And I thought, now that's a real master. Because he knew that all the things that I'd had to go through to write that book would save my life and begin a new life. And all he said was, nothing about the book, he just said, he turned to me and he said, how many prostrations have you done? And he told us all to do 100,000 prostrations. And I'd got up pathetically to 25,000. It's hard to do prostrations in an Oxford college, I can tell you that much. And I said, only 25. And he said, that's not good enough. He said, that's not good enough. Writing is not the most important thing. The most important thing is practice. And any writing you do that comes out from what you become through practice will be so much richer, so much more helpful, so much more alive, so much more inspired. So never stop practicing. I was trembling, you can imagine. I mean, he was a lion. And then he laughed and he said, so let's practice. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to tell you the two stories that are of Ladakh and of him. Because he was one with this world. And this world was one with him. And I experienced this world in his mind. Because that's what happens when you love a Buddha. The Buddha takes you into his mind. Not like in the films, like in Willy Wonka, the chocolate factory, not by giving you little quotations, but by allowing you to see the world literally through his eyes. Changes everything. It's transmission beyond words. And I just want to share with you two stories that go to the core of this revelation that is Tibet and Ladakh. He was dying, but he was totally unconcerned about his dying. He couldn't care less. He could hardly walk. He was bent over, but he insisted on teaching 6 hours a day. Because that's what a Bodhisattva does. They give everything. Right? He was teaching us 6 hours, but he was teaching us something so much more important, something none of us would ever forget, which is that whatever is going on, you don't stop transmitting love. You don't stop doing that, ever. You've got cancer, your legs are falling off, you can't walk, sometimes you can't breathe. That's illusion. The reality is the transmission of love. And we were blown away. And when he taught, an energy that would come into him like a lion would come into him, and he would teach, and he would be amazing. And then you'd see him almost dead at the end. And it wasn't a drama. It was a manifestation of what it is to be a real human being. Right? And I want to give you the first story because one day he was so sick he had to go into town to get some medicine, and we were all agonized. It was a really weird crew, by the way. There was a cabaret singer from Marseille, a German intellectual who was very German, and there was an acrobat, an ex-acrobat, and that was who was receiving these transmissions, and there was me. It was completely surreal. And we were waiting at the top of the stairs, waiting for him to return. And he came out of the car, he could hardly walk. He was at the bottom of the stairs. He could see on our faces agonized love for him. And he just laughed. He just laughed. And he was giving us direct transmission of the freedom he was in. We were identifying with the drama of the dying of his body because we were still in the illusion that it was through his body only that he was communicating this vast compassion that was shaking our lives. And when he laughed, he was saying, "Where the hell do you think I'm going to go? I'm not going anywhere. This is going. Get over it. Be with me in this vast, empty truth that is your truth, my truth, the truth of every stone and every flea. Give up the drama." And become stable and awake and passionate and focused on service. That was the first story. And the next came 2 weeks later when he was getting visibly iller and iller and iller. And in Tibet, when a great being is in this state, you have a long life ceremony. You ask the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas to give humanity the grace for the continuing of someone so amazing, whose very presence is changing so many lives. And so the young Rinpoche, who is now the head of this monastery, who isn't my master's reincarnation, in the last life he was the young Rinpoche, now he's the old Rinpoche. It's a marvelous game they play. He was in his seat doing this long life ceremony for this man who was visibly dying. And the three of us were in that room. And there came a moment in the ceremony when Tukse Rinpoche had to get down on his knees and prostrate to his pupil, to the Rinpoche. The ceremony could not work without that. And we watched this man lower himself down, prostrate. And honestly, none of us believed he would be able to get up. And our hearts were flayed. And then something absolutely astounding happened. And I mean astounding, which we all heard. He got up slowly, and his face radiated divine light, white light, and he was smiling like a lion. And at that moment, the walls shook with a sound that was like a sound of thunder, but that thunder was saying a word, and the word was Tong Pan Yid. Tong Pan Yid, which is the Tibetan for emptiness. Tong Pan Yid. And silence. He went back to his chair and he walked out. And I was so deranged and so amazed that all I could do was just to walk up the path there to Gotsang, this cave where a great mystic achieved enlightenment. And on the path, I saw one of the ornaments that had been used in the ceremony to represent him, lying in pieces on the path. And again, don't believe in the illusion. It's all Tongpan Yid. And I went back to my room, and I sat in the dark in my room, and those rocks that you see there, the rocks over there, they started to chant in a very low, dark, deep voice. And this great, calm, soft sound filled the valley. Nature was saying goodbye. So Ladakh is that smile at the bottom of that stairs, and that roar of thunder, the lion roar of freedom, Tongpan Yid. And you are in the field of those two great revelations. How marvelous. When we were writing the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, we read 1,000-year-old texts about what happens when a Buddha leaves. And one afternoon in Nepal, we found a very special text, and in that text it said, when a Buddha leaves, the rocks chant. So all of this is real, my friends. This is the only thing that is real. The rest is illusion. And haven't we all had enough of those? I hope so. I hope I have. oh God, I'm gonna need. Now I'm as rickety as he is. It's so funny. Thank you for listening to that. I think it would be beautiful if I gave you just one practice, simple, that we could use for the rest of the journey, and then I'll give you another very important one tomorrow morning. Okay? Because it's been a very intense morning. I'm so honored to be able to share this with you. And you know, I'm not sharing this with you for you to become a Tibetan Buddhist. Tibetan Buddhism has gone into the next phase. When the Tibetans were chased out of China and the horror happened, their hoarding of their knowledge was shattered. And the books that I wrote and the books that were transmitted through Sogyal and other books were directed by the Dalai Lama because he wanted the technology to be given to everybody now. But my God, we need the examples of these heroic beings, because that gives us faith on whatever path we're on. And we need to use the practices because they work. Okay? The Buddha of compassion is the presiding deity of Tibet and all of the Tibetan traditions. And he has a name, Avalokiteshvara. And he's the Buddha of the 1,000 arms. You'll see him, each arm has an eye in it. And at every moment, this great force is reaching out in a million ways to guide us, to help us, to heal us. And the Dalai Lama is the living incarnation of the Buddha of compassion, of Avalokiteshvara. And one day in this room, the Rinpoche told me this story about Avalokita, why he is the Buddha of compassion, and why the vows that I'm inviting you to take if you want tomorrow, the vows of the Bodhisattva, are his revelation, his gift. And it's one of the most beautiful stories you'll ever hear, because it's very simple. But if you really listen to it with the whole of your being, the whole transmission about what this kind of compassion that we're devoting ourselves to build a force of love that can crush evil at this tragic, terrible moment in which everything is threatened, you'll have an understanding of what it is. And you'll know that it lives in you. So here's the story. Avalokita was, for many lifetimes, a very great practitioner. He had worked with his full passion, full heart, with great masters, and he'd given everything. And he had come to the moment when he knew that he was 10 seconds away from total enlightenment, total liberation, forever and ever and ever. Buddhahood. Anyone who has had very powerful mystical experiences knows that they have this way of announcing themselves, of building, and you know that you're going to explode. You know that in another minute you won't be you. And it's as if the power gives you time to surrender before it takes you over, right? And just as he was going into total liberation, he heard a little rabbit cry out in pain. A baby rabbit, utterly defenseless, utterly unprotected, cry out in lonely agony because it had just been savaged by a wolf. A little baby rabbit. And at that moment, he couldn't bear to leave this world, because there was that baby rabbit who needed his help and his love. And so he made the greatest vow that a human being has ever made, and the greatest vow that a human being can ever make, which is the vow that it's at the core of Tibetan Buddhism. He made the vow, as long as any being in any of the worlds are suffering, I will remain in samsara. I will stay to help. Because his whole heart had become so perfected by practice, so sensitive, that he had been pierced forever by that cry of that baby rabbit. And that piercing of his being arose in him this vast, unconditional love that was able to say, I will come back again and again and again and again and again, and I will go through whatever I have to go through, and I will go through any kind of suffering, and I will go through any kind of shame and derision and humiliation. I will never abandon the world, and I will do everything in all of my power. My mind power, my heart power, my body power, to help my friends, all sentient beings. This is amazing. But you all feel it, don't you? Yeah, you know that feeling. That story is everybody's secret story. I think even the most evil person might be touched by the cry of a little baby rabbit. His Holiness has taken that vow, and I've taken that vow. And before the Rinpoche allowed us to take that vow, he said to us, we are not playing here. This isn't something you can do over a weekend. Oh, I went to Sedona and it was fabulous and I took the Bodhisattva vow. Are you kidding me? He didn't say any of that, obviously. He said, we're not playing here. This is the most difficult, the most dangerous, the most demanding of any vow you will ever take in your life. Because it is a giving up of everything, even of Buddhahood. Everything is given up for compassion. Everything. Everything. It's what happened to Jesus on the cross. Lama, lama, sabachthani. Everything went. Everything. Are you really prepared to love like that? No more words, no more experiences, no more me, 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 no more I give to the Sierra Club. But I do love my 4 houses and I just can't live without them. No. A vow that enables you to be the humble birther of a force that is nuclear, that can transform everything. But the price for that vow is total simplicity of being. You don't get through the gate into glory except on your knees, with your eyes filled with tears of compassion for the pain of the world. You can't. And there is a mantra that allows you to connect with Avalokiteshvara and this force. And it is the mantra of the Tibetan people. And in the old days you'd hear, I'd be sitting meditating alone down there and villagers would come past and they would be chanting, you know how it was. So amazing. And they'd be chanting, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. And they'd be filled with this adoration of each other, of the landscape of Ladakh. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. O-M M-A-N-I-P-A-D-M-E-H-U-N-G. But in Tibetan you say Om Mani Padme Hum. And the first time I met him was actually not in Hemis. I was taken by this old Indian Brahmin businessman and his completely insane wife, who was critical of everything, but I loved her. He said to me, you've got to meet the Rinpoche, and we'll go. We went to She Monastery, which was ruined at the time, and in the middle of this dark, gorgeous, ruined room, he was sitting like a mountain, and he was chanting, Om Mani Padme Hum. I'd forgotten that. What Om Mani Padme Hum means is you're invoking what is called the jewel at the heart of the lotus. And the jewel at the heart of the lotus is this bodhicitta that we have been trying, stammering to describe and experience together here. The jewel that will shine out and liberate you from everything is the jewel of your essential love nature, wisdom nature fused together. That's the Buddhahood jewel. And it's in every heart center, the lotus. It's at the core of every single being. It is the blessing every single being is born with. And when you say Om Mani Padme Hum, you're simultaneously saying it in adoration of the vast cosmic Buddha of compassion, and you're saying it to your deepest, best self. You're saying it to what is the most truthful part of you. You're activating that part through your adoration and through the power of the sounds. Do you see? And it's said that in the bardos after death, in the dream states after death that you go through, if you have achieved real awakening on this earth, in this body, the most terrifying forces reveal themselves as secretly friendly because they chant Om Mani Padme Hum, the thunder chants, the lightning chants, because these sounds are far more than words. They are direct mantric manifestations of bodhicitta power. And don't believe me, practice it and you will experience it beyond words. So, let's do it together in the last 10 minutes of this wonderful morning. But before we do it, I would love just to have one word from everybody as to how they are right now. One word. If you don't want to give it, that's fine, but I will never speak to you again. You are a wonderful group. Don't you all feel how grateful we are to be with each other? I'm so grateful to be with you. You're really listening. You're really here. You really are wonderful people. Bless you. Thank you. I get so sad in the West because I can talk like this and it's like doing grand opera for the deaf. You know, like Callas singing for the deaf. But this is, you're not deaf, and I'm deeply, deeply touched. Would you mind starting, Dani?
Aching.
Sorry?
Aching.
Aching. I love you. Expanding.
Blissed.
Bliss.
Serene.
Serene. Listen to these words because they're describing something.
Foggy.
Foggy.
Power.
Power.
Beauty.
Beauty. Oh, yes.
Peaceful.
Peaceful.
Bowing.
Bowing.
Resonating.
Resonating.
Passionate.
Passionate.
Grateful.
Grateful.
Loving.
Loving. Loving.
Reverent.
Reverent.
Shocked.
Shocked. Wow, great.
Loving.
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 Reverent.
Reverent.
Expecting.
Expecting. Oh, you demanding thing. Expecting. I've been enlightened, now what? No, I'm joking, darling. Expecting.
Love.
Love.
Privileged.
Privileged. Yes, we're so privileged.
Hopeful.
Hopeful. Hopeful. Oh, yes. If this is in the world, there's hope, right? And it is
Spacious.
spacious,
Compassion.
compassionate. How are you feeling, Jidnan?
Grateful.
We are so grateful for you. I'm so grateful to be beginning to know you. You're a marvelous man. And we all feel your heart and your incredible intelligence, emotional and intellectual, and your humility. You give Ladakh to us. Thank you. So, my darlings, in the honor of the Dalai Lama, whom I think we all adore, to have been on the earth at the same time as the Dalai Lama. Now that is something. Yeah. To have been in this depraved, disgusting, absolutely obscene age when every day you have to face another revelation of human narcissism, brutality, cruelty and greed, and know that there is a person sitting in Dharamsala who is a Buddha and who has reached billions of people by his presence. Isn't that amazing? And it was this tradition that gave him to us. Because this is the highest tradition. And the most evolved. And the most grounded, and has the practices that can do it for us too. You know that there has never been in the history of the world a teacher as well-known, famous, loved as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, because of technology, and because of him, and because of who he is. He's known by billions, revered by billions, adored by billions. And when he leaves, just you watch. He will arrive in the world in a way that will take your breath away. Because the last veil between us and who he really totally is him. And when he goes, there will only be the Buddha of compassion and us, and immense grace and revelation about the gifts that he has given us will come in wave after wave after wave after wave of love and miracle and revelation and encouragement. So let's do Om Mani Padme Hum for his long life, that he can be with us as long as is possible, so that we can learn more and more about this great love that he is radiating, and about how to put it into action. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Mani Padme Hum. Om 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 Mani Padme Hum. Mani Padme Hum. One last wonderful, strong one, keeping the face of His Holiness before us and pouring out our love and gratitude and adoration to Him for everything that He has given. On every level, for so long, for 84 years, He has been the Dalai Lama. Wow. May you live long and stay with us to help us as we go through the global dark night of our evolutionary crisis. Help us birth a new world, oh my beloved teacher and master. O Buddha of compassion, help us be brave now. Help us do the humble, simple work. Help us allow ourselves to open to miracle. and embody miracle. Help us to act and work in joy in the middle of so much agony and despair. Help us to be worthy of what you have loved and given in us. Om Mani Padme Hum.